In our politics lead, after narrowly passing the U.S. Senate today by the narrowest of margins, 51 to 50, President Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act is now heading back to the House, where Republicans have a razor-thin majority. They cannot lose more than 3 House Republican votes. CNN's Lauren Fox is on Capitol Hill. And Lauren, I'm doing the math here. Tom Massey is already a no, so that's 1. So they can't, now it's just they can't afford to lose 2 more. And some House Republicans are already criticizing the revisions that the Senate made to Trump's massive agenda bill. They don't like some of the changes. What are their concerns specifically? All right, we lost Lauren. Something wrong with the connection there. So let us go to our other incredible correspondent, CNN Chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. So, Caitlin, we're going to go back to Lauren when she pops back up. But earlier, President Trump says he thinks it's going to be easier to pass the bill in the House than it was in the Senate. How does he figure?
I mean, that's a good question. And what we've been hearing from White House officials is they don't want any changes made to this bill that came from the Senate and is now back in the hands of the House. Of course, the House theoretically could change it, but then it'd have to go back to the Senate before making it to the president's desk. And so that's really the question here. But this idea that it's going to be easier, I mean, right now we're seeing opposition from several Republicans who are saying that they are voting no or that they have deep skepticism and questions about it. Now, who knows? Ultimately, maybe they will flip, as we saw people like Josh Hawley, Ron Johnson do with this bill in the Senate when it comes to saying they were against it until they weren't and they voted for it. And so what the White House, though, is pushing here is this timeline. They still say they want the House to vote on this. They want them to pass it ASAP and get it to the president's desk. Do they have to necessarily do that? No, it's not a real time frame that they have to have it. It's a self-imposed deadline.
This July 4th deadline, it's not real. It's not based on anything.
Well, it's real. It's just not that it's not like if they miss it that this bill won't get passed or this legislation.
It's not like your taxes are due April 15th is my point.
Right. There's not going to be any fine or anything like that. Right. But I do think they feel like they'll lose momentum if they don't get it passed. I mean, they held a background call with reporters immediately after it passed the Senate, basically saying, here's all the reasons it should get passed. I just spoke to Russ Vought, who is the president's OMB director at the White House. We saw him, and I said any changes that the White House wants made, and they said they want it to his desk ASAP. And so essentially that's the argument they've been making. But we've seen people like Chip Roy coming out and saying they have questions about it. Elon Musk has been criticizing this bill. We'll see if he has any influence over these House Republicans. He's been praising Thomas Massey and his opposition to this bill. So it's a real question of what's going to happen here, I think, and how quickly they're going to get this.
I noticed that Vice President J.D. Vance tweeted something about
Sound very formal.
the most. I know it's not that formal, but basically he made the argument like this is a border security bill. Like he kind of like pivoted. You know, forget that he didn't say forget. But
he said the rest is minutia.
He said the rest is minutia in terms of the Medicaid changes, the CBO score, all that stuff. I mean, millions of Americans are going to no longer have access to health insurance because of this bill. So it's not minutia. But beyond that, I wonder about the messaging change. Is that part of this new emphasis?
Well, and it's safe to say moderates in the House don't view it that way. Hardliners don't view it that way when it comes to how much money it could add to the debt. I mean, the latest projection from the Congressional Budget Office was $3.3 trillion. They don't like that number. That is why Elon Musk and Thomas Massey are against this. But in terms of the Medicaid and the concerns of who is going to lose benefits here, the president was pressed on this specifically earlier, including this, 11.8 million number of people. And he essentially argued that he doesn't think that number is real, that it's overdone. But he didn't say what number he does believe of people who are going to potentially lose health care over this.
Yeah, I mean, they keep talking about I think it's something like somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million undocumented immigrants who are on Medicaid who will be taken off because of this bill. But there's millions of other Americans who will lose access to health insurance because of this bill, because of the work requirements, because they have access to insurance in other ways. There's also provisions in this bill, according to a Washington Post analysis I just read, that end the COVID-era subsidies that helped bring more people into the health insurance market via Obamacare. I mean, the number that the Washington Post was talking about was more than 15 million.
Yeah, and I think that's not something, what we keep hearing from the White House is they don't believe these outside estimates of the people who could lose their health care coverage as a result of this. They've been downplaying them or saying that they're wrong. But these are Republicans who are voicing concerns about this. I mean, Tom Tillis was saying that some 600,000 people in North Carolina, as a result of the bill as it was, were going to lose health care because the funding is not there. Also, that's the other concern that they have. And so I think that's the question of what that looks like in terms of what this number is actually going to be and how they're trying to kind of try to stave that off. Because, as Tom Tillis pointed out, Trump is on the record dozens of times saying we are not going to interfere with your Medicaid benefits.
And it's also a concern that a lot of Republicans, I mean, nobody should be concerned about who gets health insurance or whatever based on what party they are, but there are raw politics here that there are a lot of Republicans that these Republicans are worried are going to be hurt by the cuts to food stamps or SNAP and the cuts to Medicaid coverage, not to mention the rural hospitals that are potentially going to suffer because of this bill.
Yeah, and the rural hospitals obviously was a big concern, which is why they put in that provision close to $25 billion to try to shore them up. It seemed to help some Republican senators get over the line with that, but obviously there were still concerns from others in terms of what this could look like. Because the question is, are they going to take a beating in the midterms because of this? I mean, obviously that's a cynical political view in addition to how it would affect people's daily lives, but that's how they're looking at this in terms of what does it mean for them going forward. The White House has not been expressing any concerns over that. I mean, they just flatly rejected Senator Tillis's argument, even though the president said today he quit. He didn't quit. He just said he's not seeking re-election. But I think, he doesn't really have a lot to lose. His incentive there, I mean, he's not going to be running for re-election. So.
Yeah. It's also interesting to go back and look what Vice President Vance had to say in 2017 about efforts to kick people off Obamacare, to end Obamacare, which is kind of perhaps at odds with the language that we hear now. Caitlin Collins, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And do not miss Caitlin.
We might have to put doge on Elon. You know what doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies.
The monster that ate Elon. That was President Trump this morning talking about his renewed feud with billionaire and former First Buddy Elon Musk, whose companies get at least $38 billion in federal subsidies, according to a Washington Post analysis. The president also suggested he could deport the South African tech CEO after Musk supercharged his criticism of Trump's domestic policy mega bill. Musk replied on his platform X, quote, "So tempting to escalate this, so tempting, but I will refrain for now." Mr. Restraint, Elon Musk, that's how he's known. Joining us now, CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich and Hadass Solden. Hadass, this Trump-Musk truce did not even last a month, and now Musk is threatening again to form a new party and campaign against Republicans who voted yes on the legislation.
Yeah, and also I should note about the threat to deport Elon Musk. He is a U.S. citizen. I will make that clear. He was a naturalized citizen in the early 2000s. But yeah, these are some of the most concrete political threats we have heard from Elon Musk about what he plans to do going forward, because there was a big cloud of questioning after this dust-up with President Trump. What will Elon Musk do in the midterms? And now we know. He says that he's going to support the primary challenge of any member of Congress who has talked about cutting government spending but voted for this bill. He put up a poster that looked like a Pinocchio in flames saying that your face is going to be on this poster in your primary challenges, and I'm going to support them. He's thrown his support behind Congressman Massey, of course, who voted against this bill. President Trump said today Massey is going to be history, but Elon Musk confirmed today on X that he has donated to Massey's campaign. And then he talked about creating this new political party, the America Party, saying that if this insane spending bill passes, the America Party will be formed the next day. Lots of conversations we can have about how difficult it is to create a new political party, but Elon Musk is still saying that this is not about the EV, the electric vehicle mandates, or about the federal subsidies. In fact, he posted on X saying, in response to a post about Donald Trump's Truth Social post on this, saying, "I am literally saying, cut it all now." He is saying this is all about the debt. He's saying this is all about the spending. And he is also saying that, once again, this bill, he says, makes a mockery of the work Doge said. And he even said, how are we supposed to get to Mars if America is going to go bankrupt? But I can tell you, Jake, investors in Tesla, one of his most important companies, they're not very happy. Tesla stock was down today. They want Elon Musk to go back, focusing on things like robo-taxis and his rockets to Mars.
And Vanessa, Trump's mad at someone else. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Yesterday, Trump wrote Powell a handwritten letter urging him to substantially cut interest rates. How is Powell responding?
Well, Jerome Powell at the Central Banking Forum earlier today was asked point blank, is President Donald Trump, with his harsh public comments, making it more difficult for you to do your job? And he answered by saying, quote, I'm very focused on just doing my job. So brushing off the president's comments, which include, as you mentioned, that letter that you're seeing on screen there, a handwritten letter to Jerome Powell on what is a sheet of paper that contains other central banks' interest rates. He notes on that letter there that there are 34 countries that have interest rates lower than the United States. He goes on to say that Jerome Powell is costing the United States billions of dollars and suggests setting rates at 1%. Currently, interest rates are more than 4 times that. But Jerome Powell was also asked about why the Federal Reserve has not cut rates this year and what is the correlation with the trade war. Listen to what he said.
Chair, would the Fed have cut more by now if it weren't for the tariffs?
So I think that's right. In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs and essentially all inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence of the tariffs. So we didn't overreact. In fact, we didn't react at all. We're simply taking some time.
And that time that the Federal Reserve is taking is this wait and see mode, waiting to see if the tariffs, in fact, do show up in the economy. Jerome Powell went on to say he does expect inflation to rise. He is not saying whether or not we are going to see a rate cut later this month. After that, there are 3 more opportunities for the Federal Reserve to cut rates. Jerome Powell, in that same event earlier today, Jake, did say that he does expect by the end of the year, that is when we will start to see some interest rate cuts, but likely not before that, Jake.
All right. Vanessa Yurkevich, Hadass Gold, thanks to both you. Former Trump White House Communications Director Mike Dubke and Democratic strategist Karen Finney joins us now. We'll get to Musk in a second, Karen. I'm sure any American would love lower interest rates, of course. It would be a tangible win for Trump in a sense if Powell does go ahead and lower interest rates.
Sure, but here's the thing. Remember that at the beginning of the year, before Trump was inaugurated, before we knew what his tariff regime was really going to look like, the forecast was actually pretty good. The forecast was we were expecting that he would lower interest rates. The forecasts were pretty positive in terms of the rate of people's incomes, keeping track with costs. That's not happened. And so this whole thing, and that silly note that he wrote, that is an absolute distraction. That is so that we are not talking about that. It's also creating a scapegoat so that we're not talking about the fact that it's Donald Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault that the costs have not gone down. He's put more energy into, having fights with Musk and other countries than saying to, let's say, grocers, hey, we need you to lower costs. Or, again, the tariff regime, which has created all kinds of economic uncertainty. We know that now we're seeing weeks of polls where his approval ratings are going down, even his approval rating on the economy. The number one issue in the election was inflation and costs. So, sure, let's go ahead and blame someone that he claims he can fire, which he really can't until next year, instead of taking any kind of accountability for his own failure.
And Mike, Musk says that the Republican Party is now, quote, the Porky Pig Party. Yeah. Right? He actually might have been talking about both the Democrats and Republicans. I'd have to go back and look at that. But he's once again, a lot of people say this, there's a uniparty when it comes to spending, especially. And, he obviously feels very motivated by this issue of fiscal responsibility. And this bill would add $3.3 trillion to the national debt.
I mean, for us to believe right now that Elon Musk is about fiscal responsibility rather than EV tax credits and other things is really a leap of faith.
Well, just in his defense, he says get rid of them all. Get rid of the EV tax credits, get rid of the subsidies to oil and gas, get rid of all of it, he says.
I'm sure all of the Tesla stockholders that realize that they earn $2 billion on EV tax credits from other companies every year, $1.2 billion to their company straight up, are not happy with Elon's take on that. But look, you've got the president of the United States now having an open fight with the chairman of the Federal Reserve and the richest man in the world, and getting one big beautiful bill passed, at least out of the Senate today. So I don't understand why he picks all of these fights. But going back to what you're saying about Powell, we're looking at a Federal Reserve chairman that may have miscalculated. And I'm going to make one little defense here. The New York Times followed 40 products to see if the tariffs affected their increase. 10 of them did go up in cost, 3 came down, 27 stayed the same. The tariffs haven't raised haven't raised inflation in the way that the Fed has thought. So at some point, they should be lowering rates. We are higher than the EU, higher than Japan, higher than Canada,
But he did
higher
say,
than everybody but
heard
Russia
him.
right now.
But Mike, he just said they're kind of waiting it out, holding back. Hold on. There have been a number of forecasts that have suggested that tariffs would raise costs.
And they've
More
been
importantly,
wrong
though,
month after month after month.
But you and I do politics, and the
Yeah.
reality is that's not what people feel. People are feeling the anxiety. The numbers that Trump is looking at in terms of the lack of his disapproval rate on handling the economy is abysmal. And that is in part because people don't feel like it's getting better. And he's not fighting with Powell is not going to change that.
No, but you and I have sat here and we have had this, how is he not paying attention to the stock market? And now the S&P 500 on Friday was at the highest rate that it's been. I mean, things are just
He's talked more about alligator Alcatraz
and
Elon
alligator
Musk.
Alcatraz is, I know.
Well, you worked for him. I mean, you tell me.
Look, when you work for Donald Trump, you bob and weave like you're running from an alligator sometimes. It sounds like. And I'm saying right now, the man is on a winning streak.
Right.
And it's but
the
more
bill
to the
is
point on
unpopular.
policy, he's got a point when it comes to interest rates. They are too high right now.
The bill is unpopular, but it's still probably going to become law, right?
Of course.
Probably.
Absolutely.
And Musk says the moment that happens, he's forming the America Party. And look, third parties are always this whimsical kind of thing, but, Ross Perot actually had an impact on electoral politics in the 90s, and he was not nearly as wealthy as Elon Musk.
He did, and Michael Bloomberg...
On the same issue, by the way, the deficit and trade.
Decided he couldn't run as an independent because it was too hard to start a party, so he ran as a Democrat when he ran for president. Yes, that for 2028, you're right, but will a party get set up for 2026 that's going to affect the election? I don't think so. I think he's going to give to super PACs, and that's what we're going to see.
And I think in 2026, people are going to be, Democrats hopefully will do their job of making it clear that Republicans are the ones who basically kick people off health care, because that's part of what this bill will do, added 3.32, take your pick, trillion to the debt, right? That they're going to have to hold them accountable for that. And all the wheeling and dealing that we're going to hear about over the next 24 hours, they're all still going to vote for it.
And Republicans are talking about immigration, tax cuts, and the same. So we're going to have a very similar debate, just on a much bigger stage.
Yeah.
Do you think the midterms are necessarily going to be favorable for the Democrats just because of...
If we do our work, I think wrongheadedly, too many of my Democrats think, oh, we're golden.
Right.
There's a lot. I was there in 2006, and let me tell you, it took a lot of work to get where we were.
I agree. And
win.
your party's still not particularly popular. Just, I hate to bring up unpleasant things.
No, but my pink looks pretty.
But you look fantastic. Mike Duffy, Sharon Finney.
Look at that.
Thanks to lovely guests. Coming up, outrage from the families of 4 college students who were murdered in Idaho.
We feel a little defeated. We feel betrayed. We'll never see this as justice.
What one father told CNN's Jim Sciutto about learning the suspected killer struck a plea deal. Stay with us.